Good morning, Hank. It's supposed to rain this afternoon. I'll turn on the dehumidifier to prevent any headaches, okay? I place flowers in front of this picture and think of that smile from the past. Did I take good care of him? Was he happy? My father-in-law, Hank, always kindly looked out for his inadequate daughter-in-law, me. I miss you, Hank, but I'm living strong. I always will. My name is Heather, 29 years old. I moved into my in-laws' house 6 years ago when I got married. I grew up in a traditional household and married through an arranged marriage as my parents wanted. My husband's family also had old-fashioned customs. Some things were a bit out of touch with modern norms, but life wasn't as restrictive as I had imagined. Hank, who was the head of the household, and my mother-in-law Ruth, who sometimes says strange things but isn't harmful, made life bearable. My husband Sam is busy running the family business. Our marriage isn't particularly sweet, and it's disappointing that he doesn't want kids, but we had a generally good relationship. Until Hank passed away. Well, Heather, slacking off again? The weather's supposed to get worse, and it's so humid and unpleasant. You talking to his photo every day is so gloomy. Complaints came from my mother-in-law, Ruth. Her voice seemed to have become even sharper since her husband died. Good morning, Hank. I went outside and saw the flowers you liked blooming, so I got some for you before the rain. I tried to smile. I didn't want her to ruin my good mood from the morning. But Ruth's expression only got more annoyed. What? Showing off those flowers? Trying to say you took care of them or something? Are you implying I'm neglectful? Deep wrinkles appeared on her forehead. I sighed inwardly, thinking she should stop frowning if she's going to use a facial roller every night. You know, Heather, you have no sense. Running the dehumidifier before it even rains? It's a waste of electricity. She implied I didn't consider who pays the bills. She's dripping with sarcasm. Her nagging has gotten worse since Hank died. What used to be occasional odd complaints have become relentless. I thought it was just her loneliness, but lately, it seems she's actually looking for reasons to criticize me. This morning, Sam asked me, "Can you wash and dry my shirts for my trip starting tomorrow?" So I was hanging them to dry when Ruth came in. Hanging them here will dry them the fastest, I said. The forecast said that hang-drying clothes outside was difficult. Oh, what a great excuse! Blaming your lack of preparation on my son? You're a disgrace of a wife. You've gotten quite thick-skinned since moving here. She scowled, but I wasn't shirking my chores. It's impossible to prepare in advance for a last-minute request. But she doesn't care and keeps nagging. She complained about the humidity, but she's more bothersome than the weather. Worse, she tells Sam twisted versions of these events. Initially, he ignored her, but lately, he's been telling me to make her stop and blaming me for her nagging. This only made Ruth's complaints and false stories escalate. If I confronted her, her shrill voice can be heard outside the house. She also ruins the chores I've done, cutting off Hank's cherished flowers. In the end, letting her have her way and saying, "Yes, I'm sorry," is the easiest way to keep the peace. I'm so tired. Hank, I'm sorry you had to see that. After finally getting a break from Ruth's nagging, I spoke to Hank's photo again. When he had a stroke, she said, "I can't take care of him," and did almost nothing. So I took care of him instead. He always thanked me with a gentle smile, saying, "You're a big help, Heather. Thank you." Having lost my father when I was young, I initially didn't know how to interact with Hank, but he was firm, yet kind. He often thanked me, and his words were never lacking. He was positive about everyday events. One incident stands out. Early in my marriage, when I was still getting used to the kitchen in this house, I forgot to turn on the oven with the meat inside. I was bracing myself for a scolding, but Hank said, "A meal tastes even better when you're really hungry. Let's wait patiently." He even thanked me for the meal. That eased my mind, and he remained the same even when sick. He kept saying thank you during my first experience with caregiving. He was like a real father to me. That's why, even after his death, I talk to his photo every morning and worry about the temperature and humidity before it rains. With Ruth's increasing hostility, I sought solace in Hank's smile. "Hey, Heather, what's this? It's all wrinkled and dirty." That night, while cleaning up after dinner, Sam brought me the shirt I had ironed and put it in a suitcase. "And what happened in the bedroom? It's a mess. My stuff for tomorrow is scattered. This is ridiculous. I need to leave early." His demeanor had changed since Hank died. He was harsher. Hank had indeed been the pillar of the house. Sam threw the shirt at me in frustration, and I was shocked. "What is this? Why is everything scattered?" I rushed to the bedroom with the badly wrinkled and dirty shirt in hand. "What?" Rain was blowing in through a wide open window, soaking the curtains. The bed was covered with items spilled from the suitcase. I quickly closed the window and started mopping up the rain. "Oh, Missy?" In the corner, drenched and shivering, was the neighborhood cat, Missy. "Oh, poor thing, you're so wet. Come here, let me dry you off." Despite the chaos, I couldn't leave the wet cat. I gently wrapped Missy in a towel. "I know, you wouldn't do this." I held the softly crying cat. "Hey, what are you doing?" Sam's irritated voice came from behind. "That's a stray cat. Don't waste a towel on it. It probably made this mess. Get it out." Behind him stood Ruth. "This is terrible. The room and your things are ruined. And what's that filthy thing? Using a good towel on it? Unbelievable. Heather, your lack of sense is astonishing." She was more proud than angry. "Caring for a cat that broke in and wrecked the place? What's wrong with you?" Her voice was sharper than ever, and I finally snapped. "Excuse me, Ruth, but Missy didn't make this mess." "What? Of course she did!" But it didn't add up. The shirt Sam brought isn't wet, just wrinkled and dirty. If the soaked cat had messed with it, the shirt and everything else would be wet too, right? The bed was in disarray, but not wet. The shirt was the only thing covered in hair, and the rest was just scattered. Besides, I put the suitcase by the wall, closed. A cat couldn't move it to the bed and open it. Also, Ruth's hand had several band-aids. She didn't have them this morning, meaning she got scratched in the afternoon. Missy must have scratched her. The screen isn't broken, so how could Missy get in? And the only wet spot is where she was. There are no wet paw prints. Someone had to do this on purpose. Ruth backed away, practically admitting guilt. And of course, those band-aids. Before I could finish, Sam yelled, "Enough!" Startled by his shout, I recoiled. "I don't care. Just get rid of that filthy cat and clean up. I'm leaving early tomorrow. Get the guest room ready for me to sleep. Now!" I was shocked, but argued back. "No! This is too much. It's not just a prank. We need to address this." I couldn't contain my anger at Ruth's excessive behavior. But he was relentless.
Shut up! It's your job to handle the house. I don't bring my work home, do I? But you make it impossible for me to rest after coming home tired. I don't care about your problems. I'm sick of hearing every single detail.
He was venting pent-up frustrations from Ruth's constant complaints, but it was unfair. I never complained to him. It's Ruth that's telling him all those exaggerated stories. Why am I being blamed? I'm suffering too. But before I could finish, he grabbed my arm and dragged me to the front door.
Enough is enough! Get out! Without you, Mom won't complain.
I was thrown outside without my shoes. I could hear the door lock behind me. Sam, let me in! Please! I called out, but he didn't answer. Instead, I heard Ruth's mocking laughter. A wife is just a stranger. Sam, you turned out well, my baby boy. I could imagine her cruel smile even without seeing her face. Leave that woman outside with that filthy stray. The porch light went off, leaving me and Missy in the pouring rain. Unbelievable. A few days after being locked out, I was summoned to my in-laws' main house. My mother told me to apologize to avoid divorce, but I felt dread. I'll probably get scolded. Maybe I should just ask for a divorce. I haven't heard from them since. When I arrived, I was led to a room where relatives were gathered, making me feel even more intimidated. Ruth and Sam looked triumphant, like they had already won. Maybe this really is about divorce. It seems serious. I grew more nervous as the family head, my grandfather-in-law, entered and spoke.
I've gathered you here to discuss inheritance. Traditionally, the head of the family took everything, but we're changing that.
I was relieved to hear this unexpected topic. It wasn't about punishing me. But Ruth and Sam perked up, pushing forward eagerly. What's the plan for the inheritance? What about the house and the company? The same mouth that called me thick-skinned was now calculating her gains, pushing forward shamelessly. She whispered to Sam, you should get promoted and take over the business. He didn't seem opposed to the idea. Seeing their greedy smiles, I resolved to get a divorce. I could easily imagine my future with them calling me a gold digger, a freeloader, or a burden. It would be better to cut ties completely. They might even be happy to divorce me now. But then,
you two get nothing.
Grandfather-in-law sighed deeply, rejecting Ruth and Sam. And they were both stunned.
The inheritance goes to Heather. You get nothing.
I was stunned, and Ruth and Sam were speechless. You must be joking! She has no right! She ran away! You're divorcing her anyway, right, Sam?
Handling family dispute is a hassle. If we're short-handed in managing the house or the company, it's more efficient and better for mental health to hire help.
He dismissed me coldly. Then, grandfather-in-law pulled out an envelope. A will? He read Hank's will.
If there's trouble after my death, all property returns to the main house. Heather will continue to receive support.
In other words, I would always be taken care of.
No way!
This can't be! They were shocked.
Hank worried about family strife after his death. I laughed it off, but he was right. It's disgraceful how quickly you've mistreated Heather.
He shrugged.
Heather, I'll give you what's necessary for your future. You can stay married or not. Your choice. As an adopted member myself, I understand your position. We'll support you.
His kind smile reminded me of Hank.
No, 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 no. This is too much. We haven't done anything wrong. We're the victims here. She left us.
Of course they wouldn't accept this quietly. Spitting as she talked, Ruth insisted that I, the daughter-in-law, was at fault.
Enough shame. It's clear.
What? What do you mean? At his signal, a surprise guest entered. The neighbor, Max? He smiled and took out an identical envelope. Hank asked me to report any issues. Kicking her out barefoot in the rain wasn't right. Missy saw it too. Didn't you, you little munchkin? He handed Missy to me. Thank you for the help and the fare that night, Max. I never properly thanked you. Holding Missy, I smiled. You already thanked me with those sweet fruits. Thanks for those. And no need for formalities. Hank helped me in hard times. I owed him. He teared up as if remembering something. We should help each other out in tough times. That's what he always said. He was a good man. The neighbors know you suffered after he passed. We're sorry you had to go through that. My eyes welled up, thinking of how Hank had sown seeds of kindness that resulted in the neighbors supporting me.
Do you still claim to be victims?
He asked Ruth and Sam sternly, watching our exchange with their mouths agape.
You treated Heather like an outsider. If you can't respect her, you should leave. Sam, you're fired from the company. You two can go somewhere else, start from scratch, and learn some humility.
They shrank under his stern gaze.
No.
This can't be. Under the family's cold stares, they had no choice but to leave. Sam struggled to find work, and they both ended up with part-time jobs. I divorced, but stayed in the house with grandfather-in-law's permission, looking after Hank's memorial. The family assured me I could consult them if needed. The neighbors gave us some fresh peaches. Let's enjoy them together. Here, Missy, a little for you too. Surrounded by smiles and kindness, I resolved to cherish these peaceful days.
My husband gave my daughter's gift to my niece, saying, her mom's a struggling single mother. This ended up revealing a shocking truth.
I was worried that my relationship with my husband was becoming strained. One day, my mother gave my daughter a stuffed animal as a birthday present, but my niece wanted it, and my husband gave it to her. I got angry, saying it was bad for our child's education, but my husband refused, saying my sister is a single mom. Then, my daughter's bombshell statement made me suspect something between my sister and my husband. As I investigated, surprising facts came to light. What on earth did I discover? I knew marriage was easy, but divorce was hard. But actually, getting divorced consumed a lot of energy. People who are thinking of getting married from now on should think carefully. You absolutely shouldn't get married on a whim. Did I get married on a whim? Was it really that tough? Well then, let me share my experience. I dated Andrew, whom I met at the company I joined after graduation, and he later became my husband. At that time, I was also 23 years old, and my husband, who was 3 years older, seemed very attractive to me. My husband was very dependable while we were dating, and I have faith that I would be safe with him when we got married. After dating for 2 years, we got married, but when I became pregnant, my husband's behavior slowly began to change. You usually notice significant changes right away, don't you? If he has suddenly become cold or started coming home late, I think I would have noticed and felt uneasy. But my husband seemed to change little by little, so I didn't notice his changes. He seemed less kind, but I thought it was normal for relationships to become more relaxed over time. How was our married life really? When we watched TV, there was no talking. My husband played games on his phone, and I ended up doing housework. We were very affectionate when we first started dating. Friends said we seemed like an old married couple who had lost their spark, but I thought that was just how marriage was. I even believed we were a good couple because we never fought. But after I got pregnant, my husband said,
"Since we're having a child, I'll work harder."
And the conversations became even less frequent as overtime work gradually increased. By the time our daughter Luna turned 4, my husband always seemed bored at home and was mostly working overtime due to promotions. Since I also work, we had a rule to pool our salaries for living expenses and each save the remainder. I felt uneasy about giving my husband extra money, fearing it might lead to misunderstandings. I don't want to be disrespectful to people who are working diligently, but all that overtime makes me suspicious. My husband didn't come home early even on our daughter's 5th birthday, so I urged him to come home early over the phone. "Hey, where are you now?"
It's overtime, so obviously I'm at work, right? Oh, right. Today was the overnight stay. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. My bad.
Are you seriously saying you have overtime on a day like today? An overnight stay? It sounds like a joke.
I'm not joking. Seriously, what's so special about today?
I was utterly exasperated by my husband's words. That morning, I did say today is Luna's birthday, so please come home early. Thinking back, even though my husband responded, it seemed like he hadn't heard me, which made me furious. I told you, it's Luna's birthday. I've had enough. You don't need to come back. Fuming, I hung up the phone and returned to the living room where my mother, parents-in-law, and daughter were gathered. My father is away on business by himself, and my sister Susan is away traveling with her daughter Molly. Although there were fewer people than usual, my daughter was overjoyed, hugging a themed stuffed animal given to her by my mother and a drawing set given to her by my in-laws. I couldn't bring myself to complain about my husband here. With an innocent smile, my daughter said, "Thank you, everyone." Just seeing her like that warmed my heart. Even my in-laws expressed dissatisfaction with my husband not coming home for our daughter's birthday, but those feelings alone are sufficient. Even though I yelled at my husband, I defended him by saying, "Andrew is doing his best for the family," in front of my in-laws. But deep down, I still wanted him to be home for our daughter's birthday. It turned out to be a sadder birthday than usual. Having someone who hugs you from their heart is the best. I don't need a father who forgets birthdays. But a few days later, an incident occurred. On a day off, my sister Susan came to visit my house with my niece Molly, bringing souvenirs from her trip. That day, my husband was also at home, and both our families and my sister's family came together. The souvenir we received was a bit strange, but I thought I would have liked something more practical like what they sell near the train station, although I didn't complain. My sister has been divorced for 3 years now and is living with her daughter Molly while working. Even so, our parents are fully supportive in raising her, and she manages to get by as a single mother. Because Molly was a year younger, my daughter acts like the big sister. They are both very close and always stuck together when they were together. I felt reassured seeing the two of them getting along well, but then my niece exclaimed, "I want it!" about the stuffed animal my mother had given to my daughter. My daughter earnestly explained, This is something I got from Grandma. If you want it too, Molly, go ask Grandma." "Molly, let's buy one next time for your birthday." I explained this, and my niece nodded understandingly, which reassured me. But then my husband intervened between them.
Luna, you're her big sister, right? Don't be so selfish. Why don't you give it to Molly?
Huh? But this was a gift to me.
So what? You can just get another plush toy like this for the next birthday.
When my husband said that, tears welled up in my daughter's eyes. I immediately hugged my daughter and took the plush toy back from my husband. "What are you saying? This plush toy was bought by Grandma at Luna's request."
But Luna is Molly's big sister, right? It's natural to be kind to younger children.
That's a different story altogether. Besides, if you easily accept toys from others like this, Molly might get the wrong idea and take things from people. Even when I said that, my husband didn't seem to understand at all.
Susan is a new mom, you know? It's tough not even having enough to buy children's toys, so it's only natural to give some of Luna's toys.
When my husband said that, I was so surprised that I couldn't say anything. I wish my sister would have at least refrained from staying silent and tried to stop my husband. Do you have the same idea, Susan? I asked fearfully, and my sister smiled and said, Well, it's true, we don't have the luxury to buy toys. She started saying that. But there's room in the budget for the trip? Isn't it normal for a mother not to want to teach her children the wrong things? I said that too, but the argument that my daughter is older almost cost me the stuffed animal. But then my daughter said something unexpected.
Mom, please forgive her. Dad likes Susan, so he's trying his best to be liked.
Huh? What do you mean?
They are good friends. At kindergarten, I looked out from the garden and saw them walking hand in hand. Dad often talks on the phone with Susan at night. Right, Molly?
My niece nodded when my daughter asked her that. Apparently, when my niece woke up in the middle of the night, my sister was on the phone with someone. It seems that at that moment, she was calling out my husband's name. On our daughter's birthday, when my sister said she was traveling, she actually stayed at a hotel connected to a station near our home. It was discovered that my husband visited her room. But that's not true, right? We did go on a trip, didn't we? My sister tried to get my niece to nod her head in a stern voice, but she wouldn't do this. So are the two of them having an affair? When I asked that, my husband and sister turned pale and started making excuses respectively.
No, that's wrong. She's just a kid, so she doesn't understand anything. This is really troublesome.
Yeah, we went on a trip together, so we bought souvenirs too. The more they said, the more suspicious I felt. I'm sorry, I can't believe this. I'll investigate this myself. Saying that, I packed the bare essentials, hugged my daughter tightly with the stuffed animal, and went back to my parents' house. Kids are so honest, huh? They can't really lie like that. I find it hard to believe that a child would tell such a lie just because it's what the child is saying. It's almost certain that my husband and sister are having an affair, right? When I returned to my parents' home and told my mother everything, she was really surprised.
Wait, Andrew and Susan?
Their reaction was definitely strange. There's absolutely no way there's nothing going on.
But, Susan, I just can't believe it all of a sudden.
Even I can't believe it. But what do we do now? I said I'd look into it myself, but they'll be on guard. Even if we hire a private investigator now, they might not provide solid evidence, right? As my mother and I pondered our options, my daughter began to say something unexpected again.
Hey, when can I see Molly next?
I can't promise we can meet right away, but...
But Molly is my younger sister, you know. It's weird that we can't meet easily.
No, that's wrong. Molly is Mom's sister's daughter, so you're not really sisters. I thought it might be a bit early, but I unfolded a piece of paper and explained a simple family tree, complete with pictures. But my daughter looked very confused and said,
Huh? But Dad said to Susan on the phone at night, Molly is Dad's child, so it would be bad if it was found out. That means me and Molly are sisters too, right?
Hearing my daughter's story, both my mother and I turned pale. I wondered if it was really possible for my daughter to overhear that part of my husband's phone conversation so conveniently. I also thought maybe she misheard. It felt a bit too perfect. But if it were true, it would be the worst. But then a certain person came to mind. It was my sister's ex-husband, Eric, who she divorced 3 years ago. When my sister and he were married, I had exchanged phone numbers with Eric, so I decided to call him. My concern was that Eric is very shy and timid. My sister is strong-willed, so it seemed she married Eric because he was easy to handle. But in the end, I heard they mutually agreed to divorce due to differences in values. When I called, Eric answered immediately.
What is it?
About Molly. Is there any chance that her father is my husband?
Why are you asking this? I don't want to get involved and have Susan hold a grudge against me, so I'm not saying anything.
Eric said that and hung up the phone. However, this exchange made it more likely that my husband is indeed Molly's father. It frustrated me that Eric knew something but wouldn't tell me. At that moment, I received a WhatsApp message from my sister. There's no evidence even if you investigate now. Stop misunderstanding and come back. A WhatsApp message like that came and my anger flared even more. Apparently, my sister had also reached out to her mother.
Susan, who is usually so confident, is crying and insisting she's innocent. It breaks my heart. Lily, maybe you should reconsider?
They told me that, and there was no way I was going to back down. I got stubborn. Thanks to that, I figured out a lot of things and succeeded in cornering my husband and sister. I can't let such a husband and sister win. A few days later, I invited my husband and sister to my parents' house. I asked my mother to take care of my daughter and niece upstairs, and since my father had returned from his work assignment, he joined the discussion. First, we decided to hear my husband and sister's side of the story.
Lily is making a lot of noise about how we are having an affair, that I'm Molly's father, and so on, taking a joke the kids made at random.
Daddy, you need to talk some sense into Lily. We're not in that kind of relationship. I'm busy raising Molly. I don't have time for an affair.
Lily, I'm just busy with work. Saying I'm cheating because I'm working late is an insult to my hard work.
They claimed they had done nothing wrong and that I was the one who misunderstood. Is that all you have to say? If it's found out later that you're lying, you'll need to take responsibility as adults. When I said that, both my husband and sister laughed mockingly. But when I prompted a certain person to enter the room, their faces turned pale and they froze. It was Eric who walked in. My sister snapped out of it and glared at Eric with a terrifying expression, and Eric started trembling. Eric, please stay strong. I had to be firm with him, but Eric finally composed himself and took a seat. My father then spoke to Eric gently.
Eric, it's been a while. How have you been? It's been a long time. I've been fine, but I haven't forgotten my resentment towards Susan. Resentment? What do you mean? In the past, Susan was intimidating, and I could have rightfully claimed compensation, but I gave up that right and ran away. But the reason I divorced Susan wasn't due to differences in values. It was because Susan was cheating with Andrew. Eric blurts out, causing my sister to become furious. Eric, why are you telling such lies? Correct this right away or you'll regret it later. Eric trembles in fear, holding his head in both hands, and my father immediately intervenes to stop my sister. Stop it. What Susan is doing is extortion. I won't tolerate using fear to retract statements like this. When my father intervened, Susan was left dumbfounded and couldn't argue anymore. Until now, Eric has likely been treated well by my sister. It seems Susan has done something outrageous to you. As a father, I feel sorry. I'm sorry. No, perhaps my fearful demeanor allowed Susan to say such things. You are humble. It's impressive how, despite your fear, you've come this far. A few days ago, Lily came to my house and asked me to protect her daughter. Seeing others like Lily doing their best, it was embarrassing for a man like me to run away. About a week ago, I asked my mother to tell Eric's mother, and through Eric's mother, I arranged to meet at Eric's home. I thought it would be difficult to get his cooperation given his personality, but after persistent efforts, I managed it. Then I took out an envelope from my bag and spread its contents on the table. It was the DNA test results proving that Eric and my niece were not related. I've been worried since Molly was born that she doesn't resemble me at all. It's not difficult to suspect that she might be someone else's son, especially with Susan coming home late every night. When I secretly did the test, it turned out just as I expected. Susan? Who is Molly's father? My sister, who was intimidated by my father's stern gaze, couldn't answer his question. Still scared, her face buried. I suspect it might be Andrew's child, but I still don't know who the father is. When Eric looked at my husband, he too couldn't meet his gaze, and his face was buried like my sister's. So I put something on the table. I'm also suspicious about your relationship with Molly. Can you cooperate with the test to clear up this doubt? But my husband refused, shaking his head with a pale face. With that attitude, it was as if he himself were saying he was the father. If you have nothing to hide, you should be able to undergo the test. My father shouted, and it seemed like my husband realized he couldn't escape, so he immediately provided a sample. That day we temporarily dispersed. You know the result, don't you? We won't know until we actually see the results, right? It could be another man. 2 weeks later, we gathered at my parents' house minus Eric. My husband and sister looked pale, waiting for their sins to be exposed. Well, I already knew the result, so I felt relieved. The results of the DNA test that I put out on the table proved that my husband and niece were parent and child. This must be some mistake. Lily, did you tamper with something?
My husband was making such a fuss, but I coldly denied it. There's no way I could have done that. My father also intervened at my husband's attitude.
Didn't I collect the sample right in front of you? How can you accuse Lily of tampering with it?
He got angry, and my husband quieted down. Furthermore, I showed my husband a certain document. It was bank account records. Actually, when we first got married, we downloaded a banking app to view each other's savings accounts. But we used different banks, so it got buried in other apps and forgotten. I thought I'd take a look to see my husband's money movements. Then I was surprised to find out that my husband had been sending a large sum of money, $1,000 each month, to my sister.
Why did my bank account information leak to you? Did you just sneak into my phone without permission?
Look closely, you can see the printouts for the last 3 days, right? Did you forget that when we got married, we installed a banking app that we both use?
Oh, I remember that there was a banking app installed that I didn't use and I deleted it.
Is this $1,000 possibly child support? It often arrives late like this money, doesn't it? So that's why you only gave around $30 for birthday presents to me and Luna? Even when I asked, my husband just stayed silent. I thought it was pointless to talk about it any further, so I decided to end the conversation. Anyway, I'm going to divorce Andrew. And after that, I'm going to claim compensation from Andrew and my sister. Huh? You're saying you'll demand compensation from me, a single mom? After getting involved with someone else's husband? What are you saying? It's disgusting that you and my husband would get together. If you're going to do that kind of thing, be prepared to be sued for compensation. Or maybe you should ask Andrew to pay you. It seems like he has the leeway to pay you $1,000 a month. When I said that, my husband raised his voice and my sister began to get angry.
Why do I have to pay for her too?
Huh? It's partly your fault too, so take responsibility.
Why is it my responsibility? If you earned more, it would be a different story. You even made me pay on our dates.
You insisted on paying, didn't you? As my husband and sister started a heated argument, my father kicked them out of the house. Well, we'll settle this through lawyers then. Just before closing the front door, I said to my husband and sister with a smile, well, it's only natural since he cheated. When they were having fun, it was good, but the affection crumbled at the slightest touch. After that, my husband and I divorced and I claimed child support. Naturally, I demanded compensation from both my husband and my sister. It seems my husband took on debt to pay the compensation because I was said to receive the majority of the property division. He called me and said firmly,
I'm not going to pay Susan's share of the alimony,
he asserted. My husband has repayments and child support payments to make to me. At work, it seems he messed up his job due to an affair with my sister and got transferred to a different department, significantly reducing his income. Even though it's just him, life must be tough. As for my sister, she pleaded with me to accept installment payments, knowing she couldn't pay all at once. Knowing my sister had no money, I agreed it was better to accept installments than risk her evading payment altogether by insisting on a lump sum. My sister, who had been working part-time until now, has been leaving her niece with my parents and working tirelessly. Until marriage, she worked as a part-timer, then as a full-time housewife and single mother, and after that, she only worked part-time. It seems that obtaining regular employment as a full-time employee was difficult for her after she passed her mid-30s. I heard that she's working multiple part-time jobs, and it's physically demanding these days. It seems tough for her now that she's paying child support to our parents for taking care of her niece. Our parents have no intention of letting her live at home, so she's spending her time alone and lonely. I'm glad my niece didn't stay with her or my husband. I have concerns about both of them as parents. I don't care what happens to my husband and sister, but I need to protect my kids. So now I'm living at home, a family of 5 daughter-niece parents. My niece also got her favorite stuffed animal for her birthday, and my daughter and niece play dolls together. My niece is the child of my husband and sister, but the child is innocent. She's an honest and sweet girl, and I want to take care of my niece as much as I do my daughter. By the way, I'm still working hard at raising my kids. It's a bit tough, but with my parents supporting me, I feel like I can manage even though it's hard now, thinking that eventually they'll grow up and leave my care. If my daughter and niece grow up healthy and lively, that's all I need. Watching my children grow is the most exciting part. Divorce was tough, but it was good to separate properly. Thank you for listening this far. I feel relieved to see the kids happy. Thus, Lily ends her relationship with her husband and sister because they prioritized her sister's child over her own daughter. It's sad to be betrayed by those you consider family. Many men have a relationship with other women despite having a wife and daughter. It's important to be careful not to be deceived by such men.
After moving into our new home, my cheating husband said, "I'm marrying my terminally ill ex." Leave. 6 months later, frantic calls followed.
The day I moved into my long-awaited new home, I became homeless. My husband chose to be with his terminally ill ex-girlfriend, and now she looks at me with a triumphant smile. Moreover, my in-laws are welcoming his new wife without even scolding my husband. To top it all off, they have the audacity to demand custody of my beloved daughter. Will I, under siege, be able to overcome this hardship? I lost my home on the very day I moved into my new house. 6 months later, I was still troubled by calls from my ex-husband. The excitement of a new home is unparalleled. While production homes are great, custom homes have their charm too. Everything looks so pristine and dreamlike, especially on moving day. Did the house explode or something? If that's true, it would be like going from heaven to hell all at once. Let me explain in more detail. That would make me happy too. By the way, the house didn't explode. I'm an office worker in my 30s, and my family consists of my husband of 5 years, Anthony, and a 2-year-old daughter. After taking a year of maternity leave, I returned to work. Despite feeling guilty about leaving my daughter, I wanted to save for her education and build a new home. With both of us working, our savings were growing, and just as we started talking about finding land, my husband said something one day.
It seems my dad is going to help with the down payment for the house. Well, there's just one condition. It has to be built in the same neighborhood as my parents' house. What do you think?
That's what my husband said, but I disliked my in-laws. And they didn't like me either. They're old-fashioned people. When I mentioned I would continue working after marriage, they openly disapproved. Being a homemaker is fine, isn't it? I enjoy working, and most people around us are dual-income households. Anthony respects my views, and we support each other. We're determined to make it work. I said this when we first got married, but my in-laws continued to look displeased until the end. Things are different now compared to the past. Prices have changed, and it's important to work while you can. My husband shared the same view, so I felt reassured to continue working. When my in-laws found out our 1-year-old daughter would be in daycare, they said,
"Putting such a small child in daycare, isn't that pitiful?"
"You don't need to bother putting her in such a place. I can take care of her myself." I chuckled awkwardly when she said that, but whenever my in-laws got too pushy, my husband would step in.
That's what worries me more. It's definitely more reassuring to leave it to the professionals.
My husband always intervened and helped out in those times. During this time, I still believed my husband had empathy. Fortunately, my in-laws adored our daughter, so I thought our relationship with them wasn't too bad. While my in-laws often nagged and criticized, they loved our daughter, so it was bearable. Besides, I knew my husband would protect us if anything happened. Thinking this way, I agreed to my husband's proposal and decided to build our new home in the same neighborhood as his parents. However, something unusual happened to my husband. Ever since he attended his high school reunion, his mind seemed elsewhere. He started becoming more absent-minded. Life is so fleeting. Seeing my husband lost in thought like that made me worried. Amidst this, our new home was finally completed. On weekends, amidst the rush of moving preparations, we safely completed our move. A sparkling new kitchen, a spacious living room, a child room for our daughter. My heart danced with joy at it all. "We came to celebrate your new home." "Oh, what a lovely house. New homes are truly wonderful."
Maybe it wouldn't be bad for us to live here in our retirement.
I chuckled awkwardly at my in-laws' excitement. Just then, the doorbell rang. Looking at the monitor, there was a woman standing there, looking at Anthony. Must be a neighbor? She introduced herself when she came by earlier. She seemed quite friendly. I was about to mention this to my husband, but...
No, I called her over. Daphne, I have something to tell you about Cynthia.
I watched my husband's serious expression as if he had made a decision. "Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me today. Please have these if you'd like." Ignoring me as I tried to accept the gift, she smiled and handed the gift to my mother-in-law. Shouldn't she hand it to me, the wife? But before any embarrassment could register, my husband made an outrageous statement.
This is Cynthia, my high school classmate. We're dating now.
Huh? My mind couldn't keep up with my husband's cryptic announcement. Dating now? My in-laws seemed equally surprised, mouths hanging open.
Cynthia has a tumor and doesn't have long. When I heard about it at the reunion, I couldn't ignore it. I want to support her for the rest of her life. So Daphne, please, divorce me.
How can you say that so suddenly? What about our daughter? Isn't this such a betrayal? I raised my voice in anger.
Please, don't blame Anthony alone, Daphne. I'm at fault too. I couldn't forget Anthony even after we broke up in high school. Meeting again after so long, my feelings couldn't be stopped. I'm sorry.
Cynthia, I'm the one at fault. I'm sorry, especially with your condition.
Cynthia wasn't particularly beautiful, but her petite and delicate frame seemed like the type that men would want to protect. After a silence, it wasn't me or my husband or even Cynthia who spoke, but my hated in-laws.
Anthony prefers her over you, Daphne. Well, there's no helping it now, is there? Daphne, just give him the divorce.
Huh?
Yeah, I agree too. Supporting the woman he loves in her final moments? Isn't it a beautiful story?
They said. Can you believe it? Do you understand what you're saying? Anthony, you cheated on me and our daughter. It's absurd that you're not being scolded.
But is this solely Anthony's responsibility? Wasn't your change of heart also part of the problem?
The in-laws who sneer at me and Cynthia who snuggles up to them, I couldn't help but think they were all insane. Anthony left me dumbfounded. Then he uttered an incredibly shocking statement.
So, about our daughter, I think I'll take custody. My parents live nearby, and Cynthia will quit her job to become a full-time housewife. I feel sorry for our daughter having only one parent, and financially I think it's better for her.
Please rest assured that Anthony and I will raise your daughter well.
Cynthia said that with a triumphant look, as if looking down on me. I couldn't believe what my husband was saying. It's because of you that she'll have only one parent. I hurriedly took my sleeping daughter in my arms and ran out of the house as if to escape, running frantically to the main street. Fortunately, my in-laws didn't chase after me, but all I had at the time was my phone and wallet. My parents' house is just a plane ride away, but I have work. I felt like crying in misery, but I held back because I didn't want to worry my daughter. I then called someone and explained everything. It was my friend Emily, who lives in the same city. She divorced a few years ago and is now a single mother.
What? That's unbelievable. Anyway, come over right now.
Emily's words were truly a lifesaver for me. Emily has a 4-year-old daughter, and her daughter warmly played with my daughter, saying, "Let's play together." Your husband and in-laws are problematic, but that woman really pisses me off. She looks just like my ex-coworker who suddenly quit recently. Maybe it's because her name is also Cynthia. It's even more irritating. Look at this woman. And she showed me a photo from a year-end party or something. I trembled when I saw that photo, because the person in it was my husband's affair partner. Emily, this is her. My husband's affair partner. I heard she has a tumor or something, and she doesn't have long to live. What? A tumor? Tumor? Could it be that thing? After that, I heard a shocking story from Emily. The day after I left home, my husband contacted me. It seems he wanted to remarry Cynthia quickly, so he gave up custody and agreed easily to compensation and child support. It was moving day, so my daughters and my belongings were sent to the office in boxes. When I told my boss and coworkers about the divorce, everyone had opinions on the statements and actions of the in-laws. Since the nursery and work were within a reasonable distance, my daughter and I stayed in the area for a while. Daphne, thanks for picking me up today. I owe you one. Emily and I helped each other out when she had to work overtime and vice versa. Later, I started living alone with my daughter. Common acquaintances told me that my ex and Cynthia had remarried after the divorce. I heard they held a wedding, but many friends declined to attend once they heard the reason, so it ended up being only a family affair. 6 months after the divorce, my husband called, but I avoided talking to him as I didn't want to hear his voice. I thought he might send an email after giving up, but the phone rang again. Thinking it was delayed child support, I decided to answer.
Daphne, I'm glad you finally picked up. Listen, I was tricked by Cynthia. She's completely fine, full of energy. Please, Daphne, I'm sorry. I'm leaving Cynthia. Please come home.
I didn't know where to start, but I couldn't stand spending a night at the home I didn't love. So there's no reason to go back there, and it's impossible to get back together with you. I said calmly, but from the phone I could hear my husband sniffle uncomfortably. Cynthia should be fine with just monitoring the uterine fibroid, right?
Huh?
I thought she had a tumor, so I imagined malignant tumors like brain tumors. I have uterine fibroids too. They're small and asymptomatic though. If the symptoms worsen, it seems treatment may be necessary, but I hear that many people are just under observation. It seems my husband and in-laws managed to deflect the topic even when they heard the diagnosis. This is what I heard from Emily and later found out. Cynthia was diagnosed with a small uterine fibroid during a routine checkup. At this stage, the doctor said no treatment was needed. Despite that, Cynthia, perhaps wanting attention at the reunion, exaggerated and claimed she had an incurable disease. Furthermore, upon learning my husband was building a new home, it seems Cynthia wanted to take over the role of wife. Such thoughts are frightening, and I truly think my husband is a real fool for firmly believing the lie. Cynthia must have been quite grateful for my in-laws' supportive comments. And incredibly, Cynthia said, "My ex-boyfriend believed I had an incurable disease, and that's how we started dating again. He divorced his wife to be with me. He said I could quit my job because my health must be tough, and on top of that, he's building us a new home. What a jackpot." It seems she was bragging about it at work. Of course, colleagues, including Emily, were taken aback.
She looks healthy and fine, and there's no sign she's been to the hospital, so I confronted her. Then she flipped out and said,
You just believed it without even checking properly. I didn't do anything wrong.
And apparently after, Cynthia stormed out of the house.
If you had known, Daphne, you should have told me. If you had, I wouldn't have divorced you. It's hard enough to pay the mortgage on the house on my own. I don't know why I'm being blamed for Cynthia. It's hard.
Hey, what do you mean you wouldn't have divorced me? Why are you acting like you did the divorcing? Don't get it twisted. I'm the one who initiated the divorce. I divorced to get away from your fantasy-filled mind and your crazy parents. My husband seemed completely overwhelmed by my forceful tone and fell silent. As I was about to hang up the phone,
Please, Daphne, come back. We were just deceived by that woman.
I heard a feeble voice from my mother-in-law, who usually only nagged me. It seems she had been listening to our call beside my husband, and as I remained silent, feeling uncomfortable, my father-in-law spoke up.
Why not say something? Taking care of a child alone is tough, right, Daphne? Instead of being stubborn, come back.
My father-in-law's voice seemed exasperated. So you're here too? Of course, my husband is a scumbag. My in-laws are quite the pieces of work too. That's right, children really do learn from their parents, as they say. No way, you've gotta be kidding. After the divorce, raising my child has become easier. I think because I no longer have to deal with this unreasonable family.
What's with that attitude?
My father-in-law shouted at me.
That's the part of you I dislike. Can't you show respect to your elders?
Where exactly should I show respect to people who have aged but haven't matured at all? But I have to admit, there's one thing I find impressive about you, Mom. I wouldn't be able to condone my husband's cheating.
Huh?
Hey, you! What are you saying?
I could hear my father-in-law's voice, which had been completely condescending towards me until just now, sounding quite flustered, but I ignored it because I didn't care. Actually, shortly after my divorce, I encountered a certain scene. A couple walked affectionately arm in arm in front of me. The man was clearly my father-in-law. Well, he can't blame his son, can he? He's cheating too. But remember what you told me, Mom? If you fall in love, there's nothing you can do about it. So I guess it's inevitable, right?
What? But why?
Shocked, she was visibly shaken.
Daphne, please forgive us. We'll do anything.
In the background, I could hear my mother-in-law shouting at my father-in-law while my husband's voice remained lifeless. Please forgive us. Your wife lied about being sick and ran away when it was exposed, right? What does that have to do with me? It doesn't concern me at all.
But if Cynthia hadn't lied, we could still be living the way we used to.
Do you realize that by cheating, you didn't just betray me, but also our daughter? Her illness was a lie, so now, let's get back together? What a fairy tale.
What? No way.
We've already divided the assets and I got my compensation. It ended for me half a year ago. It's a memory I don't even want to recall. So stop contacting me over trivial matters. With that, I coldly hung up the phone. I could hear my husband sobbing and my in-laws argued heatedly, but they were just strangers to me now, so I didn't care. Besides, I was busy with other things. I heard that Cynthia had returned to her parents' home. I sent a certified letter to her parents' house, which I had looked up in advance. A few days later, an enraged Cynthia called me.
It's over. How dare you demand compensation now?
What do you mean, how dare I? You destroyed someone's family and thought you wouldn't have to pay compensation. I'm just asking for what I'm entitled to now that I'm ready. Is there a problem?
But you already divorced Anthony.
You think I can't claim compensation just because we're divorced? I have up to 3 years to make a claim. Didn't you know that? I thought you'd be aware of such things, given you got involved with a married man.
But I quit my job. I can't pay. Anthony and I fought, and I had to move back home. Now my parents are suspicious after seeing your certified letter. Give me a break. This is the worst.
Thinking about how someone else had also said, give me a break, I got furious at Cynthia, who showed no remorse. Everything is a result of the malicious lies you told. It's also disrespectful to people who are truly fighting illness right now. And you can't pay because you quit your job? Then just get a job. You're healthy enough. I said this and hung up the phone forcefully. Did you think I had forgotten to claim compensation from Cynthia? I was relieved to know I had prepared well. Why do people like her always act like victims? It's infuriating. In the end, they only care about themselves. As for the compensation from Cynthia, I struggled because I had no physical evidence. But since both of them admitted to their affair, I could claim compensation from Cynthia too. I actually received the standard amount of compensation from my ex-husband.
Cynthia is good at avoiding troublesome work, and she's pretty crafty about those things. Let's make sure we're fully prepared before making any claims.
Following Emily's advice, we started gathering evidence. And then a while after the divorce, I found Cynthia's social media account.
Met up with my high school ex at a reunion. We're dating again.
The post had her ex's face hidden, but it was undeniably a picture of my husband. After that, there were lots of photos of them looking cozy together, including ones taken at a hotel. A few months later,
today is our wedding anniversary. Finally together, so happy. Living together in our new house, I'm so lucky. But the wallpaper in this room was a mistake, so I'll ask my husband to replace it.
The room she was talking about was supposed to be my daughter's room. After marrying my husband, she stopped hiding her face with stickers and posted pictures openly, which was astonishing. Of course, my husband's face was clearly shown, so I saved all the photos proving they had a relationship before our divorce. A few days after Cynthia contacted me, the compensation was deposited, and then all at once my body relaxed. My ex-husband and his family hid the fact that it was a shotgun wedding and spoke very bad about me. Some of his relatives doubted the things they said about me, though. After learning everything, Cynthia's parents paid the compensation and then disowned her. Despite suddenly quitting her job, Cynthia showed up at Emily's workplace asking for her job back. But she was unanimously rejected. Emily told me that Cynthia looked quite ragged and didn't seem to be living well. I'm really glad to have a friend like Emily. Otherwise, I might have ended up homeless. The consequences of someone who cheats is just like this. It would be good if my in-laws suffered as much. I'm truly grateful to Emily. By the way, speaking of my in-laws, I reconnected with someone. It's a neighbor of my in-laws. I had a conversation with her when I brought the carpenter a gift.
Anthony, there were moments when he seemed absent-minded, but I'm relieved he has such a dependable wife. Whenever you're struggling with your in-laws, feel free to consult with me.
When I was approached by her, I knew that she was a conspicuous presence in the town. Upon meeting me again,
I was so surprised. Just when I thought the house was completed, the bride has changed. Rumors were circulating about a homewrecker and marriage, but they ended up divorcing right away. I was worried, but seeing your healthy complexion reassured me. By the way, did you know? The house now.
I couldn't help but laugh at the story I heard from the chatty neighbor. Apparently, they're trying to sell the newly built house while my ex-husband still lives there. However, for some reason, the house just won't sell at all.
You know, that house is called the House of Misfortune. It was a marriage based on deception, and in the end, they got divorced, right? They say just living there makes you unlucky. It's famous around here.
Whenever I see him, my husband seems worn out, lacking any vitality. After divorcing Cynthia, it seems there were talks about suing her for fraud. However, Cynthia is currently missing. Could it be that she's actually become homeless? I've had such thoughts, but they don't matter now. By the way, it seems my in-laws had a tough time afterward. It seems my father-in-law had an affair with a subordinate, and my enraged mother-in-law unexpectedly stormed into the company. As a result, my father-in-law was demoted from his position and became an ordinary employee. His affair partner was also transferred to a regional office. It seems my mother-in-law firmly demanded compensation, but she didn't divorce my father-in-law. My father-in-law's income significantly dropped, and my mother-in-law started working part-time. However, due to her poor memory, she was quickly fired. Nowadays, it seems the voices of them arguing can be heard almost every day from that house. I was truly relieved to be rid of such a family, thinking that my neighbor's information network must be fearsome. By the way, the room I'm renting now happens to be next to Emily's. Our children also transferred to the same nursery, and as single mothers, we're supporting each other.
When I was devastated after my ex-husband cheated on me and we divorced, you, Daphne, were the only one who cried for me. You really saved me. So when you're going through tough times, I'll definitely help you. That's what I thought.
Emily, who gave me those words, will always be my cherished best friend from now on. That's the end of my story. Thank you so much for listening this far. You fought against an unbelievable monster. A best friend whose room is next to yours is much more reliable than in-laws or anyone else. I'm rooting for you. Daphne dreams of owning her own home. But secretly, her husband had betrayed her all along. Moreover, his parents blamed Daphne instead of her husband, saying unfair things. Yet she didn't give up, supported by her best friend and beloved daughter. Whoever cheats is responsible, no matter the excuse. Making excuses or blaming others is shallow and misguided. People should realize that.
Right after I gave birth, my husband insisted, "Let my sick childhood friend hold the baby first." This is what happened as a result.
I was very caring and spoiled my husband. Instead of being grateful, he acted entitled. While I was pregnant, I found out he was cheating. I decided to divorce him for our child's sake, but right after I gave birth, he brought his lover and tried to make her hold the baby. At that moment, a midwife helped me. How exactly did this midwife save me? Right after giving birth, my husband said,
"Let my childhood friend hold the baby first."
But the midwife's words made him turn pale. I've always liked taking care of people and couldn't leave those in trouble alone. I have 2 younger brothers and a nurturing personality. I had a husband who needed a lot of care. His name was Austin, and he was such a messy person that it triggered my maternal instincts. Oh, so you couldn't keep up with taking care of him? People who are too caring need to be careful not to be used and abandoned. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was being used by my husband. I met him in my early 20s, and we started dating because he showed up to a group date with a crooked tie, which caught my attention. We both lived alone, but I was like a devoted wife to him. On weekends, I would go to his place and do almost all the housework for him. By the time I reached my late 20s,
"If you're coming over to do chores all the time, wouldn't it be easier if we just lived together and you did them? Shall we get married?"
my husband suggested this, and I agreed without hesitation. But even after we got married, his messy habits didn't change. As the first and second years of our marriage went by, he started treating me with more indifference. No matter what I did for him, he acted like it was his right to have it done. He began prioritizing his friends over spending time with me on weekends, so we spent less and less time together. Even though I liked taking care of him, I felt neglected being left alone. I often vented to my best friend from school, Catherine, but she would remind me.
"I told you to date someone more responsible and kind before you got married. Jill, I know you have a thing for hopeless guys."
She would just say and sigh. When I was dating my husband, she used to get angry on my behalf, but now she seems exasperated. Still, I was grateful she remained my friend, and I tried not to complain about my husband too much. It seems Jill has poor taste in men. Well, in Jill's case, it seems like she intentionally chose a loser, so she has no right to complain. When I got pregnant, my husband was overjoyed, and I thought we could be happy as a family of 3. Well, that ideal didn't come true. Something happened during my pregnancy that changed my feelings for him. When I was suffering from morning sickness, he didn't show any concern for me.
Morning sickness again? Ugh, that must be tough.
He didn't help out at all, even when I couldn't do the chores properly. He just left the house messy. At the time, I kept my dissatisfaction to myself. I had heard of husbands who blamed their wives for suffering during pregnancy, so I thought my situation was still better. But when I entered the stable period of my pregnancy, I went out with Catherine and discovered a secret about my husband. That day, my husband was out early because he had plans with his male friends. Catherine and I were at a shopping mall discussing where to go next when Catherine suddenly looked away from me, her eyes widening, and then quickly looked back at me as if nothing had happened. I have a keen sense for noticing things like that, so I followed her gaze and saw my husband walking with an unfamiliar woman. And they were walking hand in hand like lovers. Seeing that made me feel so down, like I had just witnessed something I shouldn't have.
Jill, let's take a break at that cafe over there.
Catherine, worried about me, led me to a quiet seat in the back of the cafe. I'm sorry for reacting so weirdly.
Stress isn't good for a pregnant woman.
It's okay, I said, even though tears were streaming down my face. Why? I've done so much for all.
You need to face reality now, and I'm going to be honest with you. Because you've forgiven him for so much, Austin thinks he can get away with anything. Still, cheating is his fault, not yours.
I knew Catherine was saying this with my best interests at heart, unlike my husband. Her support kept me from falling apart. I decided to stop taking care of my husband so as not to mislead him anymore. Thanks to Catherine, I finally woke up. If Catherine were a man, she would be a great match for me. After that, I hired a private investigator and got proof of my husband's affair. The other woman was his childhood friend, Sally. I also discovered a certain secret about Sally, so I felt pretty confident. I stopped doing my husband's chores and only did my own. When I did make dinner for him,
"Hey, where's my dinner?"
he asked. When I ignored him, he started buying meals from the convenience store or eating out. After about a week of this, he ran out of clean white socks and complained to me again.
Hey, why haven't you washed the socks? And if you don't wash the shirts today, there won't be any for tomorrow, you know?
I kept silent, but he persisted.
You used to do all this for me before. What's suddenly wrong with you? I can't do laundry or cook.
When he kept bothering me, I said coldly, I'm not your housekeeper, you know. After that, he stopped talking to me altogether. By the way, he started going to the laundromat for his laundry. It's about time he started doing things himself, right? Is it a relief that he didn't explode? Am I a stay-at-home wife? My husband is lazy and thinks getting angry is too much trouble, so when he does get mad, he must be really upset. By the way, I kept working until I got pregnant. Even before that, I was working and doing all the housework. It's a bit dangerous to continue that after pregnancy, isn't it? But once I stopped doing everything for my husband, I felt so much relief, both emotionally and physically. I woke up wondering why I had been taking care of others while enduring so much hardship. I even thought about going back to my parents' house because I was worried about living with a cheating husband and the stress it might cause. My parents' place is only about a 15-minute drive from our house, and it's convenient for visiting the maternity clinic. But since I wasn't feeling that stressed after all, I decided to continue staying at home. About a month into this, my husband's anger exploded.
Why aren't you doing my laundry? You're ignoring me. You're supposed to be my wife. I married you because you do the housework for me.
When he yelled like that, I thought it was time and called my mother-in-law on the spot. Oh, Mom, I'm sorry, but could you and Dad come over together? I'm thinking about divorcing Austin. When I said that, my parents-in-law came right away. My mother-in-law and I are close, and she always prioritizes me over her son when something happens. I showed the results of the infidelity investigation once my in-laws had gathered. My husband went pale, sweat beading on his forehead, looking completely stunned. It turns out Sally, his childhood friend, was his affair partner. You both know her, right? When I asked, my in-laws got down on their knees with my husband.
Jill, we're deeply sorry for our son's despicable actions. I'm truly, deeply sorry. This is unforgivable. Austin, apologize properly.
My mother-in-law scolded him, and my husband hastily apologized.
Jill, I can't believe you knew. I'm so sorry.
Even with his apology, I couldn't bring myself to forgive him. Did he think he could do anything just because I'm kind? While I was struggling with morning sickness and everything else, he was out there cheating like it's no big deal.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
I don't think you can be a father to this child. Let's get divorced. When I said that, my husband lifted his head, but as soon as he saw my face, he looked away. I had never shown anger towards him before, so he probably didn't realize I could intimidate with just my gaze. Growing up, I often scolded my younger brothers when they misbehaved, and they would cry and apologize just by meeting my eyes. From then on, my husband and I sat with my in-laws and had a quiet discussion. According to my in-laws, my husband and Sally have been childhood friends since elementary school, visiting each other's homes frequently. Sally has always been fragile, and my husband used to take care of her a lot, but they drifted apart after starting high school in different places. I had thought the relationship ended when Sally moved out of the state after becoming a working adult. At least that's what my in-laws had told me. Then my husband explained further.
Sally came back here 3 years ago.
Huh? 3 years ago, but that's before we got married.
Well, Sally says she was too weak due to illness and couldn't work. She's been receiving help from her parents and recovering at home. She just went out with me on weekends to have fun.
He said that, but there were also photos of Sally entering and leaving hotels. I found it strange. How could she do that if she's ill? But it looks like she's going to hotels.
She started going to hotels about 2 years ago, but she said it's okay for her to do that. But she doesn't have the energy for things like childbirth.
He said that, but both my parents and I were puzzled. What kind of convenient illness is this? It's severe enough that she can't work, right? Shouldn't she avoid strenuous activities and such? Is it something related to mental health? At that moment, my husband seemed to have exhausted all explanations about Sally. I was already fed up and felt there was no point in listening to his explanations, so I decided to just let the conversation flow. Maybe you should have married Sally instead, Austin.
Sally is delicate and can't handle household chores, so I'd have to take care of her forever, right? That's why you're different, Jill. You can do anything.
When my husband said that, both my in-laws and I were furious.
What do you think marriage is about?
Marrying Jill with such thoughts. Who do you think you're talking to? You can't even be a husband or a father. I'm going back to my parents' house. When I yelled in anger, my husband, visibly shaken by my intensity, turned pale and apologized repeatedly.
I'm sorry. I don't want to divorce you, Jill. From now on, I'll cherish you, Jill.
It's too late. I'll involve a lawyer, so stay away from me from now on. Immediately after that, I packed my belongings, and the next day my parents came to pick me up. My husband tried to stop me, but he got yelled at by my father and ended up standing there half in tears. What a pathetic guy. I guess this is what you get when you like bad boys. It's not like I specifically like bad boys, you know. I just want to be treated nicely by someone I like, and I want to be valued. I just have a strong desire to take care of others. After that, I went back to my parents' house and my father started driving me to and from work. His workplace is a bit far, so I ended up waiting at the office entrance for about 20 to 30 minutes on the way back, but it's fine with a chair there. But about 5 days after returning home, my husband started ambushing me after work. He arrives about 30 minutes earlier than me, and since his workplace is closer, he must have hurried over.
How dare you treat me like that the other day? I got lectured for hours by my dad and mom after that, you know?
He stormed into the hallway shouting like that. Well, if you got lectured, maybe you should reflect on your actions. It's your fault for cheating, so what are you even saying?
Anyway, I won't be satisfied until I get an apology from you. Get down and apologize.
We were arguing like that, drawing attention from nearby employees. What a mess. When my dad's car arrived, my husband hurriedly fled, so I was finally free. But even after that, my husband kept ambushing me after work, fleeing whenever my dad's car showed up. I had no choice but to wait on another floor in the company, then get a call when my father arrived and get into the car right away. But if it's like this every day, it's tough for me too.
Can't you work remotely?
Yes, Catherine suggested it to me over the phone, and I immediately consulted my boss. Since my job is administrative, I was allowed to work remotely until I go on maternity leave. My husband seemed afraid of my father, so thankfully he didn't come all the way to our house and I could finally relax and focus on work. He knows I'm pregnant, so he shouldn't come near. Is he trying to harass me? If so, that's beyond human decency. Since entering the final month of pregnancy, I've been staying indoors as much as possible. When I go out, it's always with my father. Some might think I should just hurry up and divorce my husband, but divorce isn't that easy, and I didn't want extra stress during pregnancy, so I decided to wait until after giving birth. 3 days before the due date, my water broke, and my mother took me to the hospital. I went straight into labor and gave birth. It was a difficult time, but the joy of seeing my child born brought tears to my eyes. However, that moment of joy was overshadowed by an incident. When the midwife said to me, "Look, there's Mom! You did a great job, Mama!" and tried to hand me my daughter, but suddenly my husband and Sally barged into the delivery room.
Nurse, wait a moment. I want Sally to hold the baby first.
At that, both the midwife and I were stunned. She wasn't a nurse, but rather a midwife, I thought, bewildered. The midwife firmly held her daughter and glared at my husband and Sally, refusing to hand her over. Without realizing the tension, my husband and Sally said, "Come on, Sally, it's your turn now. Ha ha."
She looks like me.
Feeling a bit anxious, I intervened to stop them. "What are you thinking?"
Sally can't have children. Besides, if you and I divorce, this child will be ours.
My husband spoke disdainfully of me as he tried to snatch our daughter from the midwife, but the midwife held her firmly, determined not to let her be taken away.
There's no way I'm letting you hold her. You've got some nerve. Have some shame. Know your place.
At that, my husband started losing his temper.
Who do you think you are? I'll file a complaint against this hospital.
Should we ask your parents and your in-laws if your claim is correct?
Look, everyone's here, aren't they?
The midwife said that, and when my husband and Sally looked behind them, there were both my parents and my in-laws standing there. My husband and Sally turned pale.
They weren't here just a moment ago,
my husband muttered. I had refused to have anyone present at the birth and had agreed with both my parents and my in-laws that I would contact them once the baby was born. I felt embarrassed to be seen suffering like that, so I didn't want anyone there. But by the time I finished giving birth, it seems my husband had called his mother.
I want to talk to Jill again.
My mother-in-law was appalled and told my husband that I was having a baby.
Jill is in the middle of giving birth right now, is she not? Wait a while to talk about it. Fine, then I'll go see Jill myself. If I say I'm her husband, they'll let me in.
My husband said that and headed towards the maternity ward, so my mother-in-law contacted my parents. It seems both set of parents rushed to stop my husband. That happened right around the time I had finished giving birth. What perfect timing. Also, that midwife is quite assertive, huh? By the way, the midwife's name is Catherine. Since high school, Catherine had wanted to work in obstetrics. I'll leave it to you, Catherine, for my childbirth.
Sure, it's a promise, right?
We were saying that to each other when we were students. When I became an adult, I had forgotten about that promise, but when I wondered if I might be pregnant, I consulted Catherine, and she said,
"Why don't you come to our clinic? It's close to your home, right? Remember when I promised to handle your childbirth, Jill? I can finally fulfill that promise,"
she said, reminding me of a promise made 10 years ago. The hospital I relied on was a private clinic that accommodated midwives and patients' schedules to some extent. Am I okay with a friend being my midwife? Did I rely on Catherine for help often? It seems like there were a lot of opinions online about not wanting acquaintances to handle their babies. Back in high school, we were both on the swim team and often went on trips together, soaking in the saunas. I guess I didn't feel uncomfortable since we're familiar with each other's bodies. Maybe it's just my nerves of steel. Then I told my husband loud enough for Catherine, my parents, and in-laws to hear.
"I know very well how much you've been causing Jill's suffering. I've heard about you since we were dating and I was there at your wedding, remember? Didn't I tell you? Please make Jill happy." You're Jill's... You made Jill handle all the housework even though she works longer hours, right? I've heard that even during her pregnancy when Jill was suffering from morning sickness, you didn't lift a finger to help. I can't forgive someone like you being Jill's husband, not as a friend.
When Catherine said this, both my parents-in-law and my parents turned their stern faces to me and my husband.
Jill, is that true? Not just cheating, but has Austin been causing trouble for you all along?
When asked by my father-in-law, I nodded. Yes, he just left everything to me. Still, during pregnancy, I wanted him to help even a little. Since we were dating, I've been taking care of things at Austin's house, and since we got married, he has never done any housework. As I said this, my parents and in-laws confronted my husband, each blaming him with accusatory words. Then Catherine said to me,
Indeed, the one who deserves to hold her first is the mom who worked hard.
And she let me hold our daughter, and I cried at the warmth of our daughter. While I had been aware of becoming a mother, holding her made me resolve to protect this child forever. When everyone fell silent, I turned a cold gaze to my husband and said, I want a divorce soon. I'm not interested in you anymore, but I'll definitely demand child support.
The child will be under my custody. You should pay child support. Sally can't have children due to her illness. Isn't that pitiful?
Have you really confirmed that she can't have children? By the way, what's the name of her illness? I heard from the private investigator in the infidelity investigation that Sally is married and seems to be dedicated to her husband. Still, if you care so much about Sally, you should protect her for the rest of her life. When I said this mockingly, Sally showed signs of agitation.
Jill, what are you saying? There's no way that's true.
Suddenly becoming suspicious, my husband also began to doubt Sally.
You're kidding, right? You're married? Oh yeah, take me home sometime. You live with your parents, right?
When asked this, Sally did nod. My husband's complexion rapidly worsened. At that moment, Catherine said,
This is causing unnecessary stress for Jill and the baby, so please leave.
And with that, my husband and Sally were shown out. My parents-in-law were furious and took my husband and Sally home, so I returned to the hospital room and received comfort from my parents. My husband was fooled by Sally for 3 whole years. Just how crazy is Sally, seriously? So what was Sally's illness in the end? I heard the rest of the story from my in-laws. Apparently, Sally has severe asthma as a child and often missed school because of it. But as an adult, she's been perfectly healthy. 6 years ago, Sally met a good person and got married, but due to Sally's issues, they struggled to conceive and underwent infertility treatments. However, nothing worked out well, and their relationship deteriorated. Still, they continued their facade of a marriage, and 3 years ago, due to Sally's husband's job, they returned to our town, where my husband and Sally crossed paths again. Sally hid the fact that she was married and tearfully claimed she couldn't be with anyone due to her illness. My sympathetic husband couldn't abandon Sally, I heard.
Jill takes care of everything at home, and even if I cheat, Jill will probably forgive me, right?
I heard he told my in-laws that, and I was amazed. And as my husband became deeply infatuated with Sally, he started thinking,
I have to protect Sally.
When he heard I was pregnant, he even thought about divorcing me after childbirth and raising the child with Sally. From this incident, I learned that being too lenient with people isn't always a good thing. After that, my husband and I divorced without property division. My husband knelt down and apologized to me during our discussion.
That was a moment of confusion. I was deceived by Sally.
He tried to avoid divorce with those words, but I remained firm. I don't want to deal with you anymore. Let's just get divorced quickly, I said firmly. My husband, almost in tears, filled out the divorce papers. Afterwards, I claimed compensation from both my husband and Sally. It turned out Sally's husband also found out about her affair. They ended up getting divorced too. My husband and Sally also parted ways. My husband has apparently started a side job apart from his main job, leading to days without rest. Until now, all the household chores have been my responsibility, so it seems like he's struggling with just daily life. But apparently, he hasn't been relying on his parents. Originally, my husband was indifferent to his family, and even during his single days, he was somewhat distant from his parents. After my marriage to him, my relationship with his parents was good, but our divorce has deepened the rift between them and my husband. Incidentally, Sally has no social skills, having gone from being a freelancer to a full-time housewife. She can't find a full-time job, so she handles several part-time jobs, keeping it busy every day with work. The end of those who betray their spouses and children. As for me, I've come to live at home, and I'm raising my kids with the support of my parents and close relatives. My in-laws visit us once a month to see their granddaughter. Sometimes I don't sleep well and I am exhausted, but every time my daughter can roll over or walk, I feel happy. My relationship with Catherine continues, and she often visits to see my daughter. To me, Catherine is a benefactor. If Catherine ever needs help, I want to be there for her. It's been a year since the divorce, and my daughter is now 1 year old. I've returned to work while my stay-at-home mom looks after my daughter. I work remotely while also going into the main office 3 days a week. Now, watching my daughter grow is my greatest joy. As a mother, I want to protect my daughter firmly. Thank you for listening this far. I won't spoil my daughter too much. It's great that there are many supportive people around. Hang in there with parenting. Thus, Jill cut off her husband, who only took advantage of her and did not even do things for himself. Her husband now, without anyone to take care of him, must be leading lonely days. In the world, there are various types of people. Those who are good at relying on others, those who are good at taking care of others, and more. Both probably do not lead to good results.